What breaks down is not your deepest nature. It is the role gripping the stage as if it were permanent. The pain feels intimate because the invented center says, "This is happening to me. This defines me. This must not continue." Yet the silent fact beneath every storm is simpler. Awareness sees the wound, but is never cut by the story it notices. Freedom begins the instant you catch that the injured self is not a solid being, only a thought lit up and believed. The whole drama changes there, because the prison was never life itself, only identification with the voice narrating it. Most people think life is heavy because the world is hard, other people are difficult, time is unfair, and responsibilities never stop. But the deeper exhaustion comes from a more private violence, the non-stop argument between what is happening and what the mind demands should be happening instead. That friction is what drains you when you wake, follows you through work, poisons love, turns silence into tension, and makes even success feel temporary. It is not reality crushing you. It is resistance turning each moment into a negotiation with what has already arrived. Life moves, changes, opens, closes, gives, removes. The mental self calls that movement an attack because it cannot command the tide. Before thought lays its claim, experience is astonishingly light. Breath rises, sound appears, the body walks, morning becomes evening, rain comes, hunger comes, laughter comes, fatigue comes, and none of it carries a personal accusation. The burden begins when a separate somebody is imagined at the center, trying to supervise the entire river, approve every turn, and veto every loss. Then existence stops looking like movement and starts feeling like a hostile test that must be passed before peace is allowed. Not because life turned cruel, but because the mind split the living whole into wanted scenes and feared scenes, then called the split reality. Wuxin pointed straight at this wound when he said, "Attachment to beliefs is the greatest chain." Nearly every inner struggle grows from that single root. Beliefs about who you are, how life should unfold, what others must give you, and what must happen before you can finally rest. A belief is not just an idea in the head. Once believed deeply enough, it becomes a hidden law that judges every moment passing through it. Then you no longer meet life openly, you meet a verdict in advance, and that verdict is always comparing, protecting, demanding, defending, trembling. The chain hurts most because it is invisible, and what is invisible is easily mistaken for identity. That is why so many people are not truly living life. They are living a commentary track about life. They do not encounter the moment itself, but the mind's review of it, its caption, its spin, its memory, its prediction, its warning label. They do not meet a person, they meet a projection. They do not meet a fact, they meet a reaction. They do not meet the present, they meet accumulated interpretation. And then they say, with complete sincerity, "This is reality," even though what they are gripping is mediation, filter, delay, psychological editing. The mental identity always arrives late because it feeds on what already happened, compares it to old patterns, and trembles before what might happen next. This is why so much human fatigue has no clear name. It is not only the job, the bills, the family, the screen, the deadlines, the city, or the noise. It is the internal grinding of a self-image trying to enforce order on a universe that never signed its contract. The mind glorifies this grinding and calls it seriousness, maturity, ambition, discipline, responsibility, even wisdom. But the body often knows the truth before the mind admits it. Tight chest, shallow breath, restless sleep, compulsive planning, repeated resentment, invisible dread. These are often the smoke of resistance, not the proof of depth. You are tired not merely because life asks much, but because an imaginary manager inside you insists on managing the unmanaged. Notice how absurd that manager's position really is. The rain does not request your approval before falling. The sun does not ask whether you are ready to age. The seasons do not pause to protect your preferences. And endings do not consult the ego before arriving. Existence has always been moving on its own authority, yet thought personalizes the movement and says, "Why is this happening to me? Why now? Why not my plan?" The moment natural change is interpreted as personal offense, suffering hardens from passing pain into identity-level drama. What could have been weather becomes biography, and what could have been sorrow becomes a story about a separate self being singled out by fate. So real mastery does not mean forcing events into obedience. It means no longer being ruled by the mind's interpretation of events, no longer mistaking commentary for truth, no longer surrendering your nervous system to every thought that speaks in first person. As long as success means bending circumstances until they flatter your desires, you will remain trapped, because circumstances shift, bodies shift, relationships shift, plans shift, moods shift, everything made of form shifts. The mind chases permanence inside what is structurally impermanent, then calls that chase prudence, adulthood, and intelligent living. But no role, no possession, no reputation, no image, no emotional state can hold you forever, so resting in them guarantees anxiety. Something softens the moment this is seen directly, not because you learned a new technique, adopted a better philosophy, or built a stronger personality, but because the central mistake becomes visible at last. You had been trying to find peace inside motion instead of noticing the stillness that knows motion, trying to calm the surface while ignoring the depth that was never agitated. You had been polishing the mask, defending the character, refining the performance, without once turning around to ask, who is aware of the performance? That question is not decorative spirituality. It is dynamite placed under the whole architecture of confusion. The mind may dismiss this as abstract, yet your own experience keeps exposing it every day. A thought appears and is known. An emotion surges and is known. A memory flashes and is known. A sensation tightens in the body and is known. Even the sentence, "I am suffering," shows up as an experience, and because it is experienced, something is already present before it, during it, and after it. That presence does not need to be manufactured in meditation, improved by success, or purified by failure, because it is already here before the first opinion of the morning comes online. What changes can be noticed? What is noticed cannot be the one doing the noticing, no matter how convincing the performance feels. When that becomes more than a concept, the maze begins to lose its walls. You stop trying to engineer perfect conditions for inner freedom and begin recognizing the field in which all conditions appear, change shape, and disappear. Then peace is no longer confused with excitement, positivity, certainty, or the fantasy of a problem-free existence. Real lightness is the absence of psychological friction with what is, the end of colliding with experience through a rigid center that insists every wave must justify itself. Pain may still visit, fear may still visit, loss may still visit, uncertainty may still visit, but they no longer find a fortified identity waiting to turn every visitor into permanent occupation. This is why suffering can change character without the outer circumstances improving overnight. Once there is less defensive identity, grief is still grief, but not a life sentence. Fear is still fear, but not your name. Sadness is still sadness, but not a verdict about existence. An emotion becomes more like weather crossing open land than a thief occupying a sealed house, because there is space around it instead of total fusion with it. That space is not cold detachment. It is intimacy without possession, presence without panic, the courage to let an experience move without building a throne for it inside the self. In that openness, even intense human pain can pass through without creating the old secondary torment of, "This should not be here, this ruins me, this proves I am broken." Vu Xin offered another severe freedom when he said, the world can never possess a man who wants nothing. This does not glorify numbness, laziness, apathy, or retreat from life. It points to liberation from compulsion, from the hidden belief that you need some future arrangement in order to be complete. The trap is not practical preference but ontological dependence, the conviction that being itself is incomplete until achievement arrives, another person confirms you, or the past finally explains your pain. The moment your wholeness is outsourced to changing conditions, you become a servant to whatever can appear and disappear. But being is not created by attainment. Attainment merely appears within being, shines for a while, and fades. The mind hears this and panics because it imagines that non-attachment means passivity, weakness, drift, or collapse. Yet freedom from grasping does not kill action. It clears action of neurosis. The body still moves, intelligence still responds, care still expresses itself, decisions still happen, creativity still unfolds. What begins to disappear is the psychological claimant who wants to own the river, stamp every outcome with personal authorship, and turn every result into either pride or self-condemnation. Action remains, but the burdened doer starts losing credibility. Effort remains, but the fantasy of a separate controller carrying the universe on its back begins to crack. What is left is often cleaner, more precise, less dramatic, and strangely more effective, because it is no longer leaking energy through self-defense every second. Look honestly, and the myth of control is already full of holes. Your heart beats without permission, sleep comes when it comes, aging advances without a vote, unexpected meetings reshape entire decades, and many of the most decisive turns in your life were never scheduled by the version of you that claims authorship now. Thoughts arrive on their own, moods shift on their own, impulses rise on their own, and the very sense of I am the one controlling appears as another event in consciousness, sustained by thought and gone in deep sleep. A feeling of control is not proof of a separate controller, just as the feeling of being trapped is not proof of a prison with real walls. The character saying, I am managing everything, is itself another passing appearance, lit up by the very awareness it cannot own. This is where the central question changes completely. Instead of asking, how do I master life? Something more honest appears. Who exactly is this I that demands mastery, fears uncertainty, and treats every passing thought as law? That reversal is not a minor philosophical adjustment. It is the turning point between bondage and clarity, because the game only feels unbearable to the imagined player who believes he is separate from the field. Existence itself is not at war with itself. Conflict appears when consciousness contracts into an identity and then fights to preserve that contraction as ultimate truth. Every profound teaching worth anything points here, not to improving the contraction, but to seeing it as transient, constructed, and observed. What is observed cannot be the observer, however intimate it feels. What changes cannot be the changeless fact that knows change, however persuasive its drama becomes. What appears and disappears cannot be the underlying presence that allows appearance and disappearance in the first place. Real dominion, then, is not power over fate, other people, circumstances, or outcomes. It is freedom from being hypnotized by the machinery of mind. It is the refusal to be dragged into every thought as if thought were revelation, the refusal to crown every sensation with the word me, the refusal to baptize passing content as identity. Most people spend their lives kidnapped by the contents of consciousness because they never turn toward consciousness itself. They study the objects but ignore the field. They chase extraordinary experiences but overlook that which makes all experience possible. They collect methods, philosophies, systems, affirmations, practices, insights, and techniques, while the simplest truth keeps waiting underneath the entire search. Nothing essential needs to be added to you. The real movement is subtraction, the loosening of the false center from which life has been interpreted for so long. This is not a glamorous spiritual acquisition. It is de-identification. It is not becoming grander than you are. It is ending the performance of being smaller than what has always been here. The self-image trembles at this because it survives by being taken seriously, and seriousness is the oxygen of illusion. So perhaps lightness begins at the exact point where you stop asking how to keep every variable under control and start looking in unprotected silence at the one who suffers from the idea of losing control. Perhaps the real key is not upgrading the content of your life, but seeing that no content has the authority to define what you are. Perhaps the game looked impossible only because you entered it as the character and forgot yourself as the open space in which the character rises, struggles, succeeds, fails, and disappears. Perhaps what you call destiny is simply the choreography of forms, while what you are most deeply has never been bruised by the dance, never divided by its turns, never diminished by its endings. Then the burden is no longer life itself, but the clenched inner hand trying to hold a river in a fist. And what happens when that inner hand finally opens? A worry appears, but instead of being worshipped, it is seen. A loss arrives, but instead of becoming identity, it is felt and allowed. A plan fails, but instead of proving personal ruin, it becomes another movement in a larger unfolding. The world may remain intense, tender, unpredictable, and unfinished, yet something fundamental is no longer available for capture by each passing thought. That is where genuine ease begins, not when you conquer the world, but when the world stops conquering you through the mind's running commentary. The mask may still tremble, but the light behind it stands untouched, and in that recognition, the whole game becomes lighter than air. Silence terrifies the mind for one reason. In silence, its throne starts to disappear. As long as there is noise, there is a narrator. As long as there is narration, there is the illusion of a center directing the show. Commentary creates continuity, and continuity creates the sensation that someone solid is running this life from behind the eyes. But when the inner sound dims, a dangerous suspicion begins to rise. Maybe that manager was never as real as it claimed. Maybe the self-image survives only by being repeatedly spoken into existence. That is why so many people cannot remain still without rushing toward another screen, another task, another conversation, another problem to solve. They call it productivity, curiosity, ambition, healing, self-improvement, staying informed, staying engaged. But beneath all those respectable names, there is often a quieter motive, terror of the unfilled space where identity begins to thin out. The undefined feels threatening only because the person depends on definition the way a flame depends on oxygen. And yet that very space, the one the mind avoids, is where lightness first becomes undeniable. The mind performs the same trick with time. It almost never enters the present as a living fact. It treats the present like a tool, a hallway, a transaction. It uses now to repair yesterday or purchase tomorrow, and because of that, life keeps feeling delayed, deferred, unfinished. The only place where existence is actually happening is constantly sacrificed to an idea of later that never keeps its promise. Tomorrow arrives, and the mind immediately turns it into another bridge to somewhere else. That is how people end up living on the edge of their own lives, always almost arriving, always almost becoming, always almost allowed to rest. They imagine relief is one achievement away, one explanation away, one relationship away, one breakthrough away. But the mechanism doing the searching is the very thing covering what it claims to seek. What feels like a noble quest is often just the seeker protecting its own momentum. It keeps you moving, so you never notice that what you were running toward was never absent. Look closely, and every psychological search hides the same silent premise. Something is wrong with me now. From that one assumption comes the endless inner campaign to improve, purify, transcend, evolve, prove, heal, earn, deserve, become. The mind dresses this movement in beautiful language and gives it sacred names so it feels profound rather than desperate. But if the foundation is present in sufficiency, then even the highest search is still contaminated by lack. Need cannot touch the absolute. It can only reinvent itself in more sophisticated clothing. That is why the real turning point is not receiving a brilliant answer, but watching a false question collapse. How do I secure peace? Still assumes a separate one who can own peace. How do I stop suffering? Still protects the identity that turns pain into biography. How do I master the game? Still places an imagined controller at the center of existence. The deeper cut comes when you ask who this I is before thought rushes in to name it. Does that I exist in deep sleep? Does it remain without memory, without language, without comparison, without the old storyline being replayed? Or does it arise as a temporary assembly made of thought, reference, habit, and appropriation? This kind of seeing does not comfort the person. It removes the person from the throne. And once the throne starts dissolving, the whole world begins to lose its old heaviness. Before, every situation was measured through the same narrow calculation. Does this help me, hurt me, validate me, threaten me, enlarge me, diminish me? That constant measuring was mistaken for living, but it was really contraction wearing the clothes of intelligence. When the contraction loosens, life stops looking like a courtroom where everything must either acquit or condemn your identity. The world becomes movement again instead of judgment, unfolding instead of accusation, contact instead of constant self-reference. Other people stop being mirrors, tools, dangers, or trophies and become simply part of the same living field. This does not mean the body goes numb or the mind stops doing its practical job. Fear can still rise, sadness can still move through, confusion can still appear, and the nervous system can still react. What changes is that these states are no longer instantly promoted into identity. Fear shows up, but it does not automatically become, I am a fearful person. Sadness passes through, but it no longer has the authority to rename your entire existence. That difference looks small to the thinking mind, but it changes everything. Psychological suffering becomes dense when a passing state is fused with a personal self and then defended as truth. The feeling itself is rarely the full prison. The prison is the claim of ownership wrapped around it. A difficult moment is one thing, but then the mind adds commentary, then identity, then prediction, then a future built out of the commentary. Soon you are not suffering only from what happened, but from the architecture thought erected around what happened. The mind makes an even subtler mistake when it tries to collect understanding the way it collects achievements. It hears something true and immediately wants to store it, quote it, repeat it, teach it, display it, turn it into a badge. But living truth cannot be possessed without being reduced. The sentence, I am not the mind, does not liberate anyone when it becomes another concept decorating the same old self. Freedom begins in direct seeing. Thoughts are noticed, and what notices them is not trapped inside them. Then life is no longer a series of tests designed to strengthen a separate identity. It becomes a continuous parade of changing forms, moving through that which does not come and go with the forms. Gain appears, loss appears, praise appears, rejection appears, health appears, weakness appears, clarity appears, confusion appears. But that which knows them does not enter with success or leave with failure. It is here now, before agreement, before doubt, before the next mental reaction gets a chance to speak. A leaf is light because it does not carry an idea of itself through the wind. It does not build a grievance against the season, a philosophy about direction, or a biography about being moved. Human beings gained the extraordinary ability to narrate experience, and with it, gained a nearly endless source of unnecessary suffering. They began carrying themselves as concepts, defending images, reliving echoes, fearing projections, mistaking mental residue for reality. The more seriously the story is believed, the heavier even an ordinary day begins to feel. So lightness does not require a simpler life. It requires the end of added suffering. A hard fact is already hard enough, yet the mind stacks layer after layer on top of it until the original event is barely visible beneath the interpretation. To be awake does not always erase the first impact of pain, but it stops the machinery that multiplies pain into identity and extends it through time. Then life can remain intimate, vivid, and even intense without being turned into a personal burden at every turn. And when the old impulse to claim every experience as mine begins to fade, the question changes forever. What remains of the old world when the one who kept stamping everything with ownership is seen as just another passing movement? What becomes of fear when it is felt but not crowned? What becomes of thought when it is heard but not obeyed as final authority? What becomes of life when nothing inside is trying to convert every wave into a self? Perhaps that is where true ease was waiting all along, not at the end of control, but beyond the need for it.